Well, our poll this morning is, are you surprised that the case against Anand Ram Logan and Gerald Ramdeen has been discontinued? We had 31 people voting on the poll this morning. Of the 31 people voting, 26 of you said no, you are not surprised that the case against Anand Ram Logan and Gerald Ramdeen has been discontinued. 5 of you said you were surprised. So 31 people in all voting. Of course, you can continue to vote on this poll throughout the day and through all programming, and we'll give you the final results tomorrow morning, Wednesday. Where we'll have a new poll, but we'll also give you the results of this poll. Final results.
Yes. All right.
I ain't surprised one bit.
It'll be interesting to see, as I said, to find out what Gerald Ramdeen and Anand Ram Logan has to say. I know Anand Ram Logan is always a little bit more difficult to get in contact with, to speak with. So Gerald Ramdeen is our better chance or better opportunity, since he's a fairly frequent speaker on this program.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they both feel vindicated at some level now. Being attorneys at law themselves,
Well, having a case over your head is always stressful.
Yeah, exactly. And a criminal case at that. I mean, not that civil makes it any easier in many circumstances, but I mean.
Yeah, and you may exude a certain bravado, but it's always stressful.
Yeah.
There's always something in the back of your mind that you have to deal with. And outcomes in court matters are never certain.
Yeah.
So we're going to see how it's going to play out. I assume that they're going to issue some sort of statement today at some point.
Well, yeah. I'm sure it's their time to deal with their reputations, eh?
Mm-hmm.
As anybody should in those circumstances. Somebody just sent me, I think, the agreement. One of our researchers, our loyal researchers. Right. It's signed by Vincent Nelson. I'll send it to you.
But they sent it to you already?
Yes. No, our researchers don't make joking. Our breakfast. There you go. You will understand to read it better than me. And take out the salient parts. But it's quite a development, eh?
Yeah, it is.
It's
a very high-profile case.
A very high-profile case, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get Mr. Ramdeen last hour. I'm trying to get him a while ago, but voicemail. And I was trying to get our guest online, but I don't know what happened there.
Or we could take some calls in the interim while we wait, considering the poll and what people feel about this whole entire issue, because we haven't really, we asked yes or no, are you surprised? But we haven't actually spoken to our listeners with regard to their actual assessment of what's taking place and how they feel about it.
Right.
So
I have some calls coming through already. So
yeah, in the interim while we wait.
Yeah. Good morning.
Hey, morning, Wendell. For Richard Steve Khan. Ragoobarsingh, morning.
Good morning,
Mr. Patrick.
I was surprised. You know why I was surprised? You go remember the case between Mr. Clint Huggins? Richard Ragoobarsingh?
Yeah, go ahead.
When the state under Ms. Lawrence Marriage make a declaration that even if the state witness die, once they have evidence, the case will continue. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So how this state witness is not dead, and the case dropped because he had come to bring evidence, but he already gave evidence. The man already guilty.
He said that he was willing to continue if and when his civil situation was resolved. So it wasn't that he wasn't willing.
But he can make no plea bargain again. He already plead guilty to our offense. Therefore, he had no other option than to come to court and give evidence. And even if he had come to court and give evidence, it stands.
Well, obviously it doesn't, Mr. Patrick.
Yeah, he has options.
The DPP has said the DPP has said that the issue that he's not willing to testify unless a civil proceedings case was concluded in his favor and he gets his indemnity. The DPP has assessed that as unwillingness, I guess, and to the degree that he doesn't think the criminal case can stand.
But I heard all what I'm saying. But the man plead guilty and make a plead bargain and become a state witness. So
under certain circumstances.
Yeah, under certain
circumstances. He can decide what he want to do.
Because there were conditionalities attached to his moving forward. And clearly he's optioned them.
And something wrong with that.
To you?
Something wrong with that. That's because it's two separate things going on here. But he's saying now, if that is finished, I ain't coming. That's what he's saying.
Well, he's saying that an agreement was made.
Until it's finished.
It's a little bit more substantive than that, Mr. Patrick.
Yes,
he's saying an agreement was made to do X, and you have not done X. Yeah, because that's what a plea bargain is. A plea bargain is, I give you something and I get something in return. And he's saying, if you do not do X, I'm not willing to do Y.
If you don't complete X.
Mm-hmm.
But how long did the state have was a complete X?
That is unclear.
Well, it's several years going on now.
Yeah.
All right. Because I know.
But obviously, the DPP has assessed the situation, and in his opinion, look, this does not make sense, and he's discontinued the case.
Yeah, all right.
They say they will revisit it at some time when everything finished. So Ramley never win no case. The case has dropped. All right.
All right, thanks. All right, let's bring in Pastor Clive Doughton. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. And sirs.
Recording in progress.
Morning, Mr. Pastor Doughton. How are you?
Morning.
Well, overwhelmed these days, so much is happening.
Like us all.
Yes, so much happening within a progressively shorter period of time.
But isn't this normal for Trinidad and Tobago?
I'm telling you. Mm-hmm.
Isn't something always happening?
Yes, always happening. Heel tripping.
I told someone 20 years ago, the best business to get into in this country is news. Because there's never a shortage of it.
Yeah, we can never settle down.
Anyway, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yes.
Let's just segue from our conversation there. Are you surprised, that's our question this morning, by the collapse, as the newspapers put it up, the case against Messrs. Ramdeen and Ramlogan?
Well, when I heard it last night, to give him a first reaction, I was surprised in my early reaction, because I came home late. I came home not late really, in time to catch the news. And the first face I saw on the news, I was inside my bedroom and I rushed out, was Martin Daly. And if I gather what he was saying, and as I listened to him, the surprise, kind of disappeared. I believe he was cautioning the government and perhaps more than likely the Attorney General, of not trying to, should I say, implicate or impute motives onto the Director of Public Prosecutions. In this case, I'm a bit, I'm not sure, because I take it that the Attorney General and the DPP should not be communicating in terms of a final decision like this. So I could be corrected by any of you, but I got the impression that Martin Daly was cautioning, that we do not rush to opinions and do not, be guilty of being judgmental, on the Director of Public Prosecutions. As you said, and I listened to the conversation that just, finished, there was very little that could be done if conditions were not met. And what I find in Trinidad is that sometimes some people are so sure the folks are guilty. And sometimes the surety of guilt comes when you're on the other side, and there'll be some political benefit if the person is convicted. So that I take Mr. Daly's warning as a genuine, as authentic, that, we must be careful, in how we seek to even politicize the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. I feel there's so much in the mix here. And I think the word caution is what I would use to describe Daly's comments. I haven't heard much others. I want to be honest with you.
Well, in the circumstances, certainly the DPP, as a constitutionally independent position, certainly the remit to discontinue the case is solely under his office's ambit. So yes, he doesn't need to consult with the AG concerning it. He is constitutionally protected as the
AG is a political creature, although supposed to be acting in the interest of the country and the welfare of the state. But the AG is a political creature also. We have to understand that.
Well, we know Trinidad,
that we do know.
And sometimes, we use this word constitutionally, this term protected should be, but we know that sometimes that is not the case. But I am happy. I want to be honest with you. I am happy when there is such loud disagreement between the two officers. I feel it tells me that one is acting according to his remit in the Constitution, the protection, as Richard mentioned just now, as afforded to him.
The healthy insulation.
Yes. I am not unhappy with the developments. No. I gather that we cannot say this is the end of the matter. It may take another year, it may take another 2 years, and given how the politics would swing, we can't leave out that, but at the same time, I don't think this is the end of the matter. It might be the end of the matter for now, temporarily, but I'm not sure we could say with any 100% guarantee that this case wouldn't crop up again. For example, if the conditions are met, as outlined, as articulated, by Mr. Nelson, I think it is, to see where it goes. Obviously, there was, I agree, there was some plea bargaining, there was some measure, as you said, Paul, you do something and expect something in return. Obviously, there were some promises made, and which very interesting to me, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I applaud the DPP for acting in what he calls is the best interest of all concerned, and that is what I get from him.
All right, if we could move now to that's the breaking news last night anyway, yesterday afternoon.
Yes.
The last week and a half has been replete with statements during the budget presentations of many government and opposition members. A lot of the government members of parliament came in for some severe tongue lashing from the wider population, so much so that the Prime Minister actually commented on the situation. We've had Minister of Sports Sham Fakoja, we've had Minister of Public Utilities Marvin Gonzalez, we've had MP for Port of Spain Keith Scotland. Did I miss out anybody? In their commentary regarding the budget on the central theme of sacrifice. In one instance, Minister Koja talked about the fact that her family sacrifice responsible for where she's been able, what she's been able to attain, and suggested the media was twisting her words to make us, twisting her words. We had Keith Scotland making his contribution to the budget, talking about we have to sacrifice in the context of where we are economically and go back to coal pots and riding bicycles, from which he's subsequently apologized for the hurt that may have been caused. We have Minister of Public Utilities Marvin Gonzalez talking about don't eat ham and macaroni pie every week. And the visceral reaction from the population who are under strife themselves to these comments, and the Prime Minister saying people are on edge. Are you surprised by the level of pushback now? Because I've had the honor of sitting through 7 budgets. And yes, people have different views on the budget in any government's tenure, not only this government. Budget elicits reactions, not sometimes in agreement, very often in disagreement. But this time, there is a serious pushback. Why do you think that is?
I think the population is losing confidence in the political directorate at an alarming pace. And you see, it's okay to talk about sacrifice. I think sacrifice is a great word as a Christian pastor. The whole story of Christ on Calvary and willing to come down to this earth to sacrifice his life. Within a Christian context, is great. Gandhi sacrificed his life. It's not limited to Christianity. I am not surprised at all at the pushback. I could answer that one off the cuff for you. I think there's a loss of confidence. There's this issue. I heard somebody comment, well, how the parliamentarians don't talk about sacrifice, when they love to change the cars and benefit from all this $1 million story, then we have the issue of David Lee, had dominated the news before the floods came. What I thought was a little excessive, and I could be wrong, is that the floods came and almost flooded out the bicycle, because I saw on Facebook, poor Mr. Scotland drowning in the water with 4 breadfruit, out of, moving away from him. And the poor bicycle is inundated also. So that you had a convergence of events, not planned, I'm sure, but it happened. So I believe if I were a parliamentarian today, I would ask myself, what am I doing wrong that, produces this kind of comment? It was almost volatile. Apart from going viral, it was volatile. People that they didn't want to hear, some of the politicians at all. The issue of sacrifice, let me tell you something. I believe I am correct in saying that 75% of the people didn't want to hear parliamentarians who love to change cars and get upscale cars and all kind of thing, talking and living their high lifestyle. They don't want to hear a word from them. They feel any attempt to use the word sacrifice is bloody hypocrisy, you know what I mean? So I am surprised about that at all. I want to be honest with you. And then you have the negotiations going on and the 4% to the 2% and everything else. So I think people are showing their dissatisfaction, and in a democracy, it is fair for them to show their dissatisfaction. But they feel the politicians are being essentially hypocritical. And what you're trying to do is
do you think the government is one of the bits of commentaries that the government is very disconnected to what's happening on the ground and tone deaf?
Well, people feel that way. I mean, I'm late in the technology. I'm growing, and I have seen a lot of comments on social media, and it suggests that now you will have the state propaganda machines, and I listen to a few of them, and they are going out of the way to defend. You know what I mean? But the overwhelming majority suggesting to the government you must do more listening than talking, and sacrifice applies to everybody, across the board. And you must set the example. Paul, Richard, Steve, I am getting the strong message from the population. The population is saying to the government, model what you're preaching. All right. Don't just say stuff, because we're going to look at your lifestyle and we'll hold you to account. So, to my mind, the population is saying we demand more accountability.
Yeah. What do you think causes, because you're saying that the government is disconnected, a lot of the pushback emanates from the narrative coming off from the political elites. Why do you think politicians can get so disconnected to the people they represent?
Well, I don't want to use the word sycophants, but sometimes sycophantic supporters, blind party loyalists, have a way of massaging the ego of politicians. And to my mind, that is what, we talk in the Christian context of the carnal nature, and I think other religions use different words. But is that issue that you love to hear stuff. You love people to flatter you, to make you feel you're doing right. You could be doing a whole pile of wrong, but to have a few people come out there with loud voices, not always wise words, but loud voices, and they are going to make you feel you're doing so well. So that politicians have to be aware, of that penchant to love flattery, And I think that is what is going on here. And it has gone on for a pretty long time. And then suddenly there appears to be the turning of the tide. Now, let me detail a couple of things to you. You had yesterday the scrap iron dealers going in front of the minister's house. I don't really appreciate that, to be honest with you. I don't think that is necessary. You want to protest outside Parliament if you could, everywhere. And so you had that. Then you had people suffering from the floods. Then you have this, could I say, the stalled trade union negotiations with the chief personal officer. I think there's been a development recently. So you have so many things. And the population, a lot of people, especially the lower end, economically speaking, they are feeling that nobody is really concerned about them. Wendell Eversey has a way of saying PNM is the problem, UNC is not the solution. He says that ad infinitum. So I believe if I were a parliamentarian right now, I would ask myself, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? I am being accused of being insensitive. The whole narrative, the meta-narrative, is that people believe that folks who sit down there are insensitive. They're not really sure about the pain, that the folks are going through. And people are saying, well, you're not sure about the pain. I will make you understand the kind of pain. I will use every weapon available to me, go on the media, protest, shout, caricature you on social media. I will do everything possible to make you know that you are not really experiencing the pain and you don't deserve the right to adjudicate on my issues.
How much is that an example of a growing social class divide in Trinidad and Tobago? Because to me, as I said, and I keep saying it, clearly there's a need for some level of sacrifice. Clearly we are not where we used to be 30 years ago. But two, it's not asking for sacrifice, but how you ask for it. Because sometimes when in the championing of the principle of sacrifice, there is people forget that people have been sacrificing.
A couple
Exactly.
of years.
It's not that people have been sacrificing, and there seems to be some people seem oblivious to the fact that it's not only your grandfather and grandmother sacrifice, mine too. So when you tell me sacrifice in that way, in that tone, it suggests that, well, I was living great all the time and I wasn't, or my family wasn't.
Oh, I'm glad you raised that. Let me take, for example, I am working. I receive a salary at the end of the month. In my church, we don't tolerate, moonlighting or getting direct money from churches. So we get a reasonable salary. And I was hoping that the gas price would not go up, honestly, because when I went up the last time, I traveled throughout the country regularly. And it was concerning to me. And I couldn't wait to go to the pump to see how much I would get for the value for like $100. Paul, if I could say that, and I am coming under the barrel of a gun, if I could say that, all right? And, in front of IMF officers, Imbert's response, and laughing. I did it the first time and not their riot. I do it the second time. People have that in the back of their heads. And not just Mr. Imbut, but the government people, to say the people on edge is why they on edge. You can't just say people on the edge. You have to ask the question, why they on edge? They are busy trying to make two ends meet. They're going to the supermarkets and supermarket prices. I don't want to demonize supermarket owners, but I think they must be trying their best. But the point is, sacrifice must be in the DNA of all levels of the society. Now, let me say this, the middle class and the lower class. People are convinced, and I am convinced also, that the middle class is shrinking. All right? They are convinced about that. They may be right, they may be wrong, but they are convinced about that. Certainly, once you raise the gas price, the cost of living will go up because you have to use transport to transport the supermarket goods, the market stuff, the vegetables and everything else. So, put
a pause there, Pastor Dutton, because Richard said something. I said the same thing 2 weeks ago, and Richard said something that actually had me thinking.
Yes.
But when we say the middle class is thinking, the middle class is classified by a certain salary range. Is that what you meant, Richard?
I think the middle class is defined not just by an income level, but it's also defined by a certain level of aspiration.
Right.
That I think.
Okay. Right. Well, I'm glad you clarified because, okay, so middle class represented a particular aspiration, and that aspiration was grounded in your revenue, your income, and what you could afford, the standard of living you were able to afford and what you could aspire to.
Right.
Persons in that category now, because of the economic pressures, the inflation rate, the price at the pump, the price of the groceries, the aspiration is shrinking. So in that regard, to me, the middle class philosophy is under pressure. Because even if you were making $12,000 a month, it is not going nearly as far as it would have 15 years ago.
Nope.
Of course. And I want to say something here. It is a pity that the Economic Advisory Council that involves the trade unions and everybody else, that has broken down almost irreparably. And I don't see an attempt, to fix that so that you're going to have, you have a little, the government said they're sticking at 4% and they're giving. You have two elements in the society that we need to have a sense of balance. You have the trade unions, all right? Some of them want too much. To my mind, it's impossible to give people 15 and 18%. I listen to the Prime Minister, and I try my best to be balanced and honest. So you have that, okay? One end. And then you have the other extreme of the what people perceive as the insensitivity of the politicians. Now, how you arrive at middle ground, to my mind, is the greatest challenge. And you cannot arrive at middle ground with the divisiveness of the politics that you have. You know how many parliamentarians can stand up and say, you see my party, I don't agree with them. The minute they do that, they're going to be demonized as selling out, as being Judases. So that the political climate doesn't afford an objective discussion in what is real and what represents a sense of balance and even nobility. All right? Because obviously we don't have the money we had 15 years ago. Obviously you can't get, what you're crying out for, although you may have been, you see, what the law middle class and lower class saying, although I hate to use the terms, they are saying we sacrificing all the time. And you want us to sacrifice more again, and you ain't sacrificing. I mean, you're living in your upscale environments and you okay. You hardly have to buy groceries or whatever benefits you're getting, and you're telling us to sacrifice. But we're sacrificing for decades. It's a time for a change. And they are asking for a time for a change now. I think when Stuart Young appeared on Quest, he made a lot of heavy statements. And I was wondering, what was the genesis for that? With all due respect, if Guyana for energy minister spoke that way, I could understand. But I heard him make some very elaborate statements. They're going to settle wages, the extra money they have and everything else. I don't
Stuart Young is a politician with the greatest of respect, Pastor. Stuart Young is a politician who is not going to go on international CNN on that very popular economic show and talk about the strife happening in Trinidad and Tobago, the discord between the government and the unions, and the fact that people catching this skin out here. It will not paint his government in a very positive light, and he's not going to do that. His message is going to be, we are all right. We have some challenges, and we will settle everything because our government is great. That, and I get it. You understand? It doesn't mean it's accurate, but I get it.
And of course, what you have is the reverse taking place. And you have a disenchanted group. If you're not careful, it become a disenchanted mob. And I want to tell the politicians with due respect, let's be cautious as we go forward. Don't take the population for granted. I mean, sometimes I watch the role of the police, when you have protests and where you could have protests and how you can't have protests. But you have to be careful not taking away the legitimately constitutionally enshrined, opportunities for protests from individuals. You have to be careful. You don't even be perceived that way in the least. So I am saying it's a wake-up call for all of us. All of us must sacrifice. I agree. The trade unions real in some of their askings and requests and appeals? Not always. And they too must get real. Not only the politicians must get real, I keep saying about the other side must also get more realistic in terms of what they're asking for. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I heard the Prime Minister say on more than one occasion when they were talking about 2% and 4% and everything else. Well, you have to start somewhere. And we discussed, and I got the impression that he was open for another figure, whether it's 4.5%, whether it's 5% or whatever it is. I got that impression. But now I'm hearing with the budget speeches, that is it. All right. So don't come asking for no more. That is it. So that sometimes you have to be careful what we say. We may make a statement that gives people the impression you're open to, to move up a little higher. And then you come back and say, well, that's it. Nothing could be done. It's costing billions. And if we go like 8 and 10%, we just don't have it. Now, the population has to be real too, because it appears to me we just don't have it. You know what I mean? It appears so to be. How we could inspire hope when we can't give you an extra 1% is the challenge for the political leadership right now. How we
But I
could still
think hope
give
has to come. Hope has to come from a place of authenticity and people believing or trusting in you as the messenger of hope.
Right.
And I think
I accept totally.
And that's a key thing. But and I know we have spoken to you before, and I think Trinidad and Tobago has morphed into a very angry society at certain points. You feel people are very angry, and I don't know what kind of bait that anger and frustration, which feeds into the hopelessness that people can feel, because they call all kind of cousins to each other in terms of that overall picture of a society. And you are a Christian leader, so has religion impacted on the society enough in terms of being able to abate some of that sense of hopelessness, or have they failed?
Yes. I think we have. Well, if I give a straight figure, out of a figure of 10, I think in religion we are around 5.5. Just over the past mark. We need to do more. And yesterday was World Mental Health Day. And I dealt with depression at the Wellness Center in Barrett area there, and Dr. Ocho was there. He dealt with management of stress. I think the psychological and emotional, state of people in the country, we need to give it a strong look and address that. Because in spite of all the negatives, leadership is about, we are supposed to be the bringers of hope, whether we in religion, whether I could tell you, yesterday I had to help out a woman who has 10 children. Now we could do all the talk and say, why she have 10 children? You know what I mean? And the husband hardly working anywhere, and she just holding on to a URP thing. We could talk about all of that. But the point is, while you have to perform what the analysis and paralysis, you have a lady with 10 children who are under enormous pressure. And so there has to be a short term, before you talk about the golden, medium, and long term, there's a short term need that has to be supplied. And I feel in terms of religion, if I could speak, we need to do a lot of reorganizing and rethinking. But we need to do, we have to make sure and go in the trenches and help too. Now, we don't have unlimited resources, granted. But I think how we even spend our dollars must be up for a serious restructuring. And we have to engage our membership more in the Good Samaritan model. Because sometimes in religion, you talk about the prosperity gospel, about the lifestyles of some of us as religious leaders. And you don't see, I'm going to get in trouble here. You don't see a concern for the poor as you should. Okay. So we have to be careful in terms of things like prosperity gospel and that kind of thing, because it spits in the face of people who are struggling to make a living. They're still trying to give you an offering when Sunday or Saturday morning comes. So that the issue of sensitivity is not just for the parliamentarians. It's for business leaders. It's for religious leaders. And we must perhaps be at the top of the scale when it comes to sacrifice. We can't be modeling a certain lifestyle and then telling people they must sacrifice, So all of us as leaders, not just politicians, but all of us as leaders, we have to set a better example.
We were talking about sacrifice a while ago, and in the context of what you just said, people also need to feel that they are sacrificing toward an end. And without the clear path articulated, the light at the end of the tunnel, and the hope that Richard spoke about, sacrifice is a really meaningless word. Because every time there's high oil prices, it don't seem to trickle down. So some people will feel no matter how much I sacrifice, there's only one strata of society benefiting from the sacrifice. And that to me is a great challenge in this country. There doesn't seem to be equitable distribution of the wealth when there's wealth.
Exactly. And I heard in the news last night, somebody was robbed and there was 10,000 US in the house, and that made me think, because I went to the bank to get, 200 US, I couldn't get 50. So that we have to bring in the bankers here and the companies that boasting about so many heavy profits. Why are we talking about sacrifice? And while you don't want to be judgmental, at the same time, you have to ask yourself the question, well, we catching our nenen or where we tails, or we could say there, and yet people boasting about these abnormal profits. So the message that comes across is an uncaring message. Let's be quite frank about that. And there are a lot of people who have very little to eat. That is the bottom line. And government must know when the pushback comes, it doesn't come back from people just greedy. It's come back from people who are trying to make two ends meet, and they can't give their children a proper breakfast when the morning comes. So it boils down to that. And we have to see that as a pressing reality and do better. I have a concern with how we deliver budgets, sir. And this has nothing to do with Imbert and his personality. I feel when you're doing a budget, you have to tell us exactly what happened last year, where the projects are, and how they will come into fruition this year. And when you're giving all your promises, make sure it's rooted in a kind of near reality. That has to happen, okay? And it must have that element of hope still, within the mix.
Yeah.
And crime. Are we underestimating the impact of all of this social pressure on the burgeoning crime situation?
Well, yesterday I tuned into a station and I was amazed. Rich, Steve, and Paul, I was amazed. They were, all right, you demonize America, crime to America, have cluster shootings, and we have cluster shootings, and we didn't have kidnapping for a long while. Who says so? I went to Moruga on Sunday and I bonked up a kidnapping case, and the country doesn't know a thing about that. You know what I mean? And the guy was carried to the forest on dumb days, the father of 2 children, he's a good musician in our church, and he showed me all the marks on his wrist and everything else. So that, let's get real, you know what I mean? They may have gotten some of their facts wrong or whatever, but the crime rate and the murder rate is untenable. We are going to 500 this year again. And whether we like America or not, and whether they agree with the advisory or not, and whether America has some of the same problems and more, all right. But the point is, You know, we have a challenge here that we need to fix, and the issue of the home and the issue of our young people, 13, 14, and 15, the issue of being trained in underground shooting ranges, whether it's in south or north, is a critical thing. So all these are realities that we can't laugh about. You know, look at the 15-year-old boy in the school there. I mean, look how you, if he was a delinquent in school, and you know, he loved violence, but nobody deserves to go that way at age 15. You mean nobody could have reached out to that kid?
Even if he were a delinquent, and we're not sure that he was, because there's no evidence of that, he should not have died that way.
No, exactly. And I'm happy for you saying
But
that.
very often we say, well, he was a bad boy, so let him take what he get. And
Yeah.
that's a feeling of society. One, on raising him properly, and two, how he ended up dying. I don't care what anyone.
But by the way, if we're not careful, a lot of teenagers will end up that way. And I am saying we must put teenagers at the top of the burner. You know, I see we have a national service, we don't put national service, but we have to do something. You know what I mean? That will impact a lot of young people at the same time. I met with a 22-year-old with his parents yesterday, and he's saying to them in front of me, I don't want no help. They want him to come to our rehab center. He said, I don't want no help. Now, what has gone wrong there? Now, I haven't gone into the history of the family, but I told him, see me in 2 weeks and see if your mind will change. I kept the door open, because when it comes to teenagers, as somebody has been involved in that for years and decades, you have to keep the door open. He said, okay, Pastor, I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. I don't want to go rehab. You know, I want a job. I want to keep smoking my ganja from time to time, but I don't want to go to rehab. You know, and I told the parents, you know, it's not your wish for him, you know, it's his wish for himself. And he's 22 years old, you know. So keep the door open for our teenagers.
Where do you think all this is going?
Well,
Are you seeing any light at the end of the tunnel? Let me phrase it that way.
well, 30%, I would say that, you know. There's some of us who are not giving up, who are the incredible optimists, and we keep running behind the young people. And those of us who are doing it, we must keep doing it. And we have to try to mobilize more people to do
Yes,
it.
but Pastor Dutton, you sat
Yes, sir.
on a couple of occasions where I sit. And that is supposed to be one of the main instruments of change and progress in the country. That place on Abercrombie Street that's painted red, that place that is at the center of our democracy in Trinidad, because you have sat in there and seen the goings on. You look at television and see the goings on. And that is supposed to be the instrument of change and the beacon of hope. Is it?
Yes. Sometimes it is not. And that is the truth. And we must speak truth to power on that. And a lot of improvement must go on there. But also in our schools, in our churches, in our NGOs. All right. We have got to call for in the business institutions and the banks. Banks, you're too insensitive. If you're listening and you're viewing, all right, you need to step up to the plate also in a bigger way and not feel comfortable announcing all these, you know, ungodly profits and business institutions. So we have to call on everybody, and we must not lose hope. I appeal to all of us. We must not lose hope, and we must keep doing and keep improving where we are, and calling upon leaders, all right, to be more sensitive.
Pastor, thank you for being with us.
God bless all of you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
God bless all.
Yes, thank you, Pastor.
All right, Pastor Clive Dotton. All right. As we head up to our 8 o'clock news brief, all courtesy Champlain Auto Services. Good morning to you wherever you are. Traffic is still heavy in usual routes. Yeah, it is heavy. Trinity Central Road.